Ahsoka Episode 3 was a classic bit of Star Wars storytelling, and in a lot of ways, it mirrored the early beats of A New Hope. Ahsoka, Sabine, and Huyang discussed the Jedi and the Force, just like Han, Luke, and Obi-Wan did in the franchise's first installment. Ahsoka also trained Sabine in lightsaber combat, just like Luke learned to deflect blaster bolts with a Jedi training droid. And just like Luke, Sabine was blindfolded during her training, using a Jedi training technique called Zatoichi. As the episode revealed, the technique was named after Zatoichi, a fictional blind samurai from the late 1900s. He traveled the world helping the oppressed, and because he couldn't rely on his eyesight, the character became one of George Lucas's biggest influences for the Jedi in Star Wars. But discussions about the Force and Sabine's Jedi training weren't the only important things that happened in Ahsoka Episode 3. Just like in A New Hope, both of those things happened while Ahsoka and Sabine were traveling through hyperspace. And with promises of going to an alternate galaxy to find Thrawn and Ezra Bridger, it's the perfect time to discuss what hyperspace is, how it works, and what it means to the Star Wars franchise. Invented in the 1920s and 30s, hyperspace quickly became a staple in science fiction. The concept involved parallel universes and alternate dimensions as a method of faster-than-light travel. Essentially, it was a storytelling device that allowed characters to move great distances in short amounts of time. That's how George Lucas intended to use hyperspace, but in Star Wars, it took on a life of its own. He designed the blue lines as a signal that someone was jumping into hyperspace, but he didn't expect it to cause such a stir. Here's a quote from Lucas.
Mostly it was just a device that I needed to get from point A to point B quickly. And at the time, it created quite a visual event, which I didn't even realize until I saw it with an audience. To us, it was just going into hyperspace. We got so used to it, we never even thought of it as anything. And it was never designed really to be an entertainment event. It was really designed just, well, we got to get from here to that, so you do it and no big deal.
Lucas may not have intended for jumping into hyperspace to be a big part of Star Wars, but it became quite the visual event. When viewers saw Han Solo take the Millennium Falcon into hyperspace for the first time, it opened the whole galaxy, and the stream of blue and white lines is still an iconic part of the franchise. The actual workings of hyperspace are a bit complicated, and even in-universe, hyperspace travel wasn't truly understood. Basically, it was traveling hundreds or even thousands of times faster than the speed of light. But it wasn't just moving at extreme speed. Hyperspace was its own coterminous dimension. That meant that everything in real space aligned with the hyperspace dimension. It's almost like the Upside Down in Stranger Things, where there's a parallel reality that mirrors our own, except the hyperspace dimension wasn't inherently evil. While hyperspace wasn't evil, traveling in hyperspace was extremely dangerous. Everything in real space casts a shadow into hyperspace, so certain hyperspace routes had to be taken to ensure that travelers didn't plummet into a star, a black hole, or any other space anomalies. In the modern Star Wars era, those routes were calculated by a navicomputer, meaning hyperspace travel was relatively safe. However, space doesn't stay in stasis. It's constantly in motion, which means navicomputers had to be constantly updated with the latest star maps and navigational data. If not, your ship might happen upon a roaming black hole and be pulled out of hyperspace. If that happened, you'd probably be sucked into the black hole. And even if that didn't happen, the odds of someone finding you in real space were extremely low. Before the days of trustworthy navicomputers, hyperspace travel was achieved through more natural means. In Star Wars Legends, the ancient Celestials commanded the Force and shared their knowledge with mortal races. One of those races was called the Qua, and they used the Celestials' teachings to build a system of infinity gates, which allowed for instantaneous travel across the galaxy. Using that technology, the Qua built a benevolent expansionist empire. However, they were soon overthrown. During their explorations, the Qua discovered a planet called Lahone, where the Rakatans lived. The Qua shared their knowledge of the Force with the Rakatans, but the Rakatans had a dark nature, and they only called upon the dark side of the Force. Using the dark side, they created the Rakatan Empire, which ruled the galaxy for over 10,000 years. While they were in power, the Rakatans discovered hyperspace travel. Using the Force, they were able to safely guide their ships from planet to planet. However, when the Rakatan Empire fell, much of its technology was lost, leaving the Republic to rediscover how to travel in hyperspace. Hyperdrives had to be developed along with the appropriate navigation technology. All kinds of relatively primitive devices were used along the way, and for thousands of years that made hyperspace travel extremely hazardous and perilous. Even when the hyperdrives and navicomputers were developed, someone had to plot maps and safe travel lanes. Star Wars canon has started to tell those stories during the High Republic era, when Jedi Pathfinders were sent to explore the galaxy and expand the Republic. During that time, many ships weren't advanced enough to have onboard navicomputers, so the Republic used hyperspace beacons as fixed navigational points. The beacons were giant computers in space, which plotted hyperspace courses for passing vessels. Over time, navicomputers were developed and added to all hyperspace-capable ships, which led to the modern era of hyperspace travel. In Star Wars Legends, the Rakatans discovered the concept of hyperspace travel. While the Rakatans have been added back into Star Wars canon, the Ahsoka series has confirmed that they're no longer the first ones to have traveled in hyperspace. The premise of Ahsoka is finding Grand Admiral Thrawn, and the first few episodes have shown that he's stuck in a neighboring galaxy. While the concept of a new galaxy is inherently a major development in the Star Wars franchise, it also comes with massive implications for hyperspace. In the Star Wars Rebels series finale, a pod of Purrgil took Thrawn and Ezra into hyperspace. For years and years they were missing, but Morgan Elsbeth has finally figured out where her master is. She discovered an ancient star map that led to a neighboring galaxy. The way to that galaxy was called the Pathway to Peridea. And while it seems like a jump to conclude that Thrawn and Ezra are automatically in Peridea, it actually isn't. It turns out that the Pathway to Peridea was discovered by studying and copying Purrgil migration patterns, not by Celestials sharing information about the Force. So in turn, the Pathway to Peridea should follow the same route that the Purrgil take through hyperspace, which will lead to Thrawn and Ezra. All of that leads to two major conclusions. First, some extragalactic aliens must have forged the Pathway to Peridea and visited the Star Wars galaxy in the depths of time. No species inside the galaxy would have had ships powerful enough to travel intergalactically. Not to mention, no species would have had the capability to navigate and plot an intergalactic map. So it must have been some extragalactic aliens who followed the Purrgil, visited the galaxy, and developed the path. Second, the Pathway to Peridea indicates that the Rakatans weren't the first ones to discover hyperspace travel, that ancient aliens were apparently doing it first and at a much higher level. And that leads to a question. Who were these ancient aliens? Clearly the aliens had something to do with the Night Sisters. The ancient star map was hidden inside a Night Sister temple. Moreover, the Night Sister Morgan Elsbeth knew that the Pathway to Peridea started on Cetos and led to the neighboring galaxy. So it's possible that the Night Sisters originated in Peridea and migrated to the Star Wars galaxy in the depths of time. If that's the case, viewers will be in for a treat because Peridea is likely to be strong with Night Sister magic. That means Ahsoka and Sabine will have to deal with Morgan Elsbeth's mercenaries, but they might also have to deal with any number of magic users. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you like how Ahsoka is changing parts of hyperspace? And what does the presence of ancient aliens do for the Star Wars franchise? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.